Midnight Cassette.
Seven Steps to Success by North of North of North. Paul Adams had only two major problems in his life. Firstly, for the last 3 weeks, the number 17 bus scheduled every morning at 7:04 a.m. had been arriving late, causing Paul numerous confrontations with Susanna, the floor manager. Deciding how to kill Susanna, who wielded her workplace authority like a red-hot poker, was his second problem. Since her transfer several months ago, she had induced in Paul a sense of contempt he thought impossible. And through her constant sneers and attacks, she had haunted his every living moment. So on one restless Monday evening, as Paul agonized over the myriad of insults Susanna had spat at him, his fragile mind splintered, and the shards of his sanity could form only one option. Susanna, the floor manager, had to die. Surprisingly, the plan itself raised little concern in Paul, as he revised the facts in his head. And whilst he knew that such a bold and open confrontation would initially make him appear the aggressor, he truly believed that once the world heard his story of the agony and torture she had inflicted on him with her constructive criticisms and disciplinary meetings, he would be praised in the streets by everyone as a hero of the people. He saw himself like Dorothy, crushing the evil witch in her own hurricane, and never showing a twinge of remorse, though he considered stealing her shoes to be a step too far. But this time there would be no other witch, and he would stay right there in Technicolor Oz. The thought amused Paul, and a wry smile settled on his face as he climbed into bed and slipped into a sleep that for the first time in months wasn't plagued by the contorted faces of egomaniacal floor managers or by the smug, self-righteous corrections they endlessly spewed forth. Upon waking, Paul felt like a new man with a new purpose, and he stood up and stretched. His voice broke the stillness of his lonely apartment. "Today is the day," he stated to no one in particular, and he felt strangely assured, as though the furniture was showing its approval through its silent indifference. His daily grooming ritual was accompanied by a merry whistle, which he was barely aware of, and as he grabbed his toothbrush and faced the mirror, he noticed his face had brightened from its usual ashy gray pallor into something approaching a human complexion. And to his surprise, a sharp-toothed smile had cracked and apparently set behind his thin lips, giving him an unsettling appearance he somehow misread as attractive. Nevertheless, he interpreted this as yet another sign that he had found a cure for his melancholy, and so he headed into the kitchenette, placed 2 thick slices of bread into the toaster, and opened his window wide so he could take in the morning air and listen to the birdsong. However, what Paul Adams instead heard raised such a mix of emotions he could do nothing but stand by the window and stare ahead. Down on the street 2 floors below his apartment, Susanna's shrill voice reverberated off every surface as she screeched at her phone with the ferocity that pricked the hairs on Paul's neck. "It's only been out of the garage for 2 weeks and now it won't start. What did you do to it? I'll sue you if it isn't fixed by this time tomorrow, and don't expect me to pay." She howled as she jabbed at the end call button and threw herself down on the small bench at the bus shelter opposite Paul's apartment building. At first he refused to believe she was really there, as it struck a discord with his original plan to kill her in the office, and made him feel strangely uncomfortable. However, Paul quickly realized, though, that this offered an even better window of opportunity. Word of his success might even reach his colleagues before he got to the office, and could prompt a surprise office party, maybe even a cake. Forgetting all about his now burning breakfast, he tore his cutlery drawer open and waded through the pile of disused spatulas and novelty bottle openers, eventually drawing out a long kitchen knife and a pointed meat skewer, which he admired in the light for a moment. Snapping back into animation, he sprinted towards his front door, which he wrenched open with ease, and headed through the hallway and down the 2 flights of stairs to the dimly lit foyer, where he stopped for a moment to look out at the street and ensure that she was truly there. She was. He could now feel his heartbeat throughout his body, and the coursing adrenaline sent a shiver of electricity up his spine. Glancing at his watch and reading the time as 7:03 a.m., Paul took a deep breath and stepped out into the daylight, pushing through the entrance door as though it were a feather. Like a predator hunting its prey, his attention was now locked on Susanna, and the rest of the world faded to white as he began the 7 short steps toward his kill. First step. The sensation of the grisly tools he grasped in either hand resurfaced in Paul's head, and his grin broadened as images of their forthcoming scene flickered behind his eyes. Second step. A glint of sunlight dancing on the blade caught Susanna's eyes, and she squinted at the figure coming towards her. Third step. Paul had stepped off the pavement now and onto the dark tarmac that separated them. Fourth step. Susanna's lip twisted into a semi-smile as she recognized Paul and attempted to passively acknowledge his presence. He replied by quickening his pace and letting out a short, manic snicker. Fifth step. Her attention was once more drawn to the shimmering object in his hand, which she was beginning to recognize as a blade, and the other long, dull item which she couldn't identify. All at once, she felt a chill of fear spread through her body as the situation dawned on her. Sixth step. Paul was now almost on the opposite pavement, and in an instant would be raining down blow after glorious blow against his nemesis, who was now cowering away from him in the corner of the shelter. Seventh step. Paul found his advance suddenly halted by an immense force that slammed into the left-hand side of his body and threw him to a patch of pavement several meters down the street, where he lay for a moment, overcome by shock. He tried to sit upright, but his body refused, and as he gathered the strength to lift his heavy head from the tarmac, he noticed the skewer he had been carrying moments before was now firmly lodged into the center of his chest. Unperturbed by this discovery, he tilted his head further only to see the familiar sight of the number 17 bus. Only now its windscreen was shattered and sprayed with a fine red mist, and slightly to the right of it, peering through the plexiglass bus shelter, was Susanna, the floor manager. With his final strength spent, Paul Adams' head fell back to the tarmac with an earthy thud, and one final thought crossed his mind. At least, the bus was on time.
Midnight Cassette. Created, edited, and produced by Dimension Bucket. 7 Steps to Success by North of North of North. Narrated and recorded by J.C. Cahias. Music by Dimension Bucket. Special thanks to J.C. Cahias, Theater Obscurum, CreepyPastaNetwork.com, and Reddit.com.